It seems as the world gets bigger, space gets smaller, but that's certainly not the case for everyone. There are some homes that defy the grandest of expectations. So join me for today's video. I'm gonna count down the top 15 largest houses in the world. Number 15. Penmore. Alright, kicking off the list is a home in the United States bigger than the White House, the Penmore Mansion. It's located in the Ozark Mountains of Missouri. This mansion is one of the largest homes in the country at 72,000 square feet. Standing 5 stories tall, it holds 14 bathrooms and 13 bedrooms, and with exterior walls about a foot thick, it's built to withstand even the nastiest of earthquakes. In fact, the Penmore Mansion can allegedly even hold up against other natural disasters like an EF5 tornado, and even man-made mayhem like bullet fire and bomb blasts. Why someone would want to wage war against this palatial home is anybody's guess, but it's quite impressive nevertheless, and perhaps one of the few homes capable of surviving the apocalypse thanks to the reinforced sustainable concrete. This giant home is owned by none other than Stephen T. Huff, an American astrophysicist, inventor, and philanthropist with an incredibly impressive resume. A former employee of the United States Army and CIA, Tuff founded multiple defense and intelligence companies, which he would eventually sell to amass about $80 billion in assets. Tuff went on the record stating that his mansion in the Ozarks should stand for the next 2,000 years. And when you're as rich as this man, maybe you can afford the technology to keep you alive for that long. Construction finally wrapped up in 2016 after an 8-year endeavor, and Tuff purposefully built Penmore in an area not subject to government building inspections or regulations, meaning he gave himself carte blanche to do quite literally whatever the hell he wanted, hence the bulletproof walls. But when you have such a house as this, conspiracy theories will abound. Many online pseudo-sleuths believe that the Penmore Mansion is used to house state-of-the-art defense systems, while others believe it's just one entryway to a series of underground tunnels spanning the North American continent that the Illuminati will plan to use in case of a world-ending war. While some conspiracy theories are certainly fun to play with, odds are that the Penmore home is just a massive project of an eccentric billionaire. Number 14. Hua Huen. How nice would it be to live in your own private utopia? Well, that's exactly what China's Hua Huen is. This literally translates to utopia or peace blossom land. This is naturally one of the biggest homes in the world, coming in at 72,441 square feet. But this home really does feel like a paradise as it sits on an island in the middle of a misty lake in China. The place is truly astounding, and while so many homes on this list took many years of permits and construction to complete, this one just took 3 years to build. This peaceful pagoda is made of 32 bedrooms and 32 bathrooms, all fit for an emperor, and was listed for 1 billion Chinese yuan or $154 million. In fact, this is one of the most expensive pieces of property ever sold on the mainland. The estate can be found about an hour-and-a-half's drive west of Shanghai on an island just at the edge of the Shuhodushu Lake, where you're sure not only to escape the hustle and bustle of Shanghai life, but maybe even catch a glimpse of the stars at night. But the best part about this home, all 32 bedrooms face south, meaning plenty of sun and literal good feng shui. This home sits right in the middle of an old-school courtyard with plenty of water and rock features, like a pond, swimming pool, and garden, and a spectacular view of the surrounding lake. Having no neighbors is also a plus at a place like this, but then again, with a property so large, someone could stay here for days or even weeks without the owner even knowing. Number 13. Villa La Lipola. The Villa La Lipola sits right on the ocean in France and is owned by Lily Safra, widow of the banker Edmond Safra. And while she must miss her husband terribly, she was left with a pretty penny to take care of herself. This villa sits atop 50 acres on the Alpes Maritimes department of the Côte d'Azur and was even the setting for Alfred Hitchcock's film To Catch a Thief in 1955. So what's so special about this French villa other than the views, the acreage, and the fact that it's on top of a mountain? Well, the property is home to a commercial greenhouse, an outdoor kitchen, the obvious pool, and even a helipad, so Miss Safra can come and go as she pleases from just about anywhere in the world. So if the name Leopolda sounds a bit familiar, that's because it's named after the same Leopold II of Belgium, who owned the Villa Cedras. The king had a lot of money and he knew how to spend it. He gifted this French villa to his mistress in the early 20th century. This home has since been redesigned and is now worth an estimated $750 million. Number 12. The Gemini Mansion. One of the most expensive houses in the United States, the Gemini Mansion feels like more of a resort than it does a single-family home. And that's probably because it takes up 16 acres of space, extending from land to sea. It's an absolute marvel of a mansion just outside of Palm Beach, Florida, holding 12 bedrooms in the main house, another 7 in the guest cottage, and a total of 34 bathrooms. That's one bathroom for every day of the month and then some. This Gemini Mansion's been around since the 1940s and is the former home of fashion icon and socialite Gloria Guinness. Nowadays, though, it's owned by tech billionaire and former Oracle CEO Larry Ellison. But really, it's the view that's priceless, offering 1,200 feet of frontage right on the Atlantic Ocean and another 1,300 feet on the Intercoastal Waterway. Living here is as close to owning a slice of paradise as you're gonna get. That is if you've got the cash. It was designed by architect Marion Sims Wythe in the 1940s. This mansion was originally the home of the Lambert pharmaceutical family, who would probably be happy knowing their old beachfront home has passed on and on and on again amongst the world's richest people. Number 11. Bill Gates' Xanadu 2.0. Designed by the top mind of Microsoft, Xanadu 2.0 is Bill Gates' mansion that overlooks Lake Washington in Medina, Washington. The 66,000 square foot mansion with an estimated value of $124 million took about 7 years to build. So what can you expect from this mogul Xanadu 2.0? Well, it's said to include 7 bedrooms, 19 bathrooms, a spa, a 60-foot pool, a gym paneled with stone from a mountain peak in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, a trampoline room, and a stream for salmon, trout, and other fish. This place is clearly a billionaire's paradise. Gates came up with the house's name from the film Citizen Kane, where the main character, a business tycoon, names his lavish property Xanadu. And while not much else is known about the lush and lavish Xanadu 2.0, we do know that when Gates purchased the lot back in 1988, it only cost him about $2 million. Number 10. La Rêverie. When you run one of the largest hedge funds in the world, there comes a point where money is no longer an obstacle. There's just a series of meaningless numbers with dollar signs slapped in front of them. Such is the case for Stephen Schoenfeld, who bought La Rêverie from a hair care mogul, Seidel Miller, in 2019 for $111 million. Originally built by Miller, this became the most expensive home in Florida's history. So what does more than $100 million get you? Well, the entire estate sits on 6 acres of beachfront property, with over 70,000 square feet of interior living space, along with 11 bedrooms, 22 bathrooms, multiple living rooms, a spa, salon, and even a bowling alley when you want to kill time and play 10 frames. Schoenfeld already owns a $90 million home in Old Westbury, New York, an apartment in Manhattan's Park Avenue, and another penthouse already in Palm Beach. So picking up La Rêverie is just another drop in the bucket for the hedge fund family. But his Palm Beach estate isn't in any old neighborhood. Now, his most expensive home, Schoenfeld now lives in one of the richest neighborhoods in the United States, Billionaires Row, and calls celebs like Ken Griffin, Paul Tudor Jones, and Donald Trump his neighbors. Just imagine knocking on their door and asking for a cup of sugar. But the private beach is the real standout here, because you're not going to get that living in Manhattan. Schoenfeld and company can enjoy 350 feet of beachfront and another 230 feet of their own waterway. That is not a bad place to live. Number 9. The Palace of Versailles. Alright, it wouldn't be a proper list without mentioning the Palace of Versailles. Located in France, the Palace of Versailles is one of the most visited places in the world and is without a doubt one of the most extravagant structures in the world. Like so many others of its kind, the Palace of Versailles was home to many great kings and queens dating all the way back to the 17th century. The palace had originally started out as the official hunting lodge for the royals, but it was none other than King Louis XIV who began to transform it into the absurdly large and fancy palace that we see today. Aside from the extravagant living quarters, all clad with art on the walls and golden statues, the Palace of Versailles is also home to the famous Hall of Mirrors, where the old French aristocracy would hold their grand balls and spend nights in the state apartments. But for those rich and famous who would rather spend some time out in the sun, there were, of course, plenty of more natural settings for them to choose from on the palace grounds. One of the greatest features of the Palace of Versailles to this day is the intricate garden mazes that anyone could easily get lost in for hours. Number 8. Whittlehurst Mansion. The Whittlehurst Mansion in London, England is a Georgian revival built back in the early 20th century, and since that time it's been home to some pretty prominent and wealthy figures. It's even been the filming location for big-time movies like The Lost Prince, Tipping the Velvet, and Fame Academy. Now, needless to say, the Whittlehurst Mansion has literally a rich history, and so it should make sense that it's one of the most expensive homes in the world. But it's also old and was subject to some natural wear and tear over the years, so it underwent a substantial refurbishment in 2008, which only adds to the value further. This London mansion is the second largest residence in London with 90,000 square feet of space to explore and a grand total of 65 rooms, 25 of which are bedrooms. That means I guess the owner can sleep in a new room each night just for about a month to keep things interesting. But one of the largest and most extravagant rooms here is the ballroom that's 70 feet long with 20-foot-high ceilings. This mansion also boasts a massive dining room, gallery room, and billiard room when you want to shoot some pool at the end of a long day, and it costs only $450 million. Number 7. The One Bel Air. Yo homes to Bel Air, there's no way that the uber-affluent neighborhood would only house just one of the most expensive homes in the world. Spanning almost 100,000 square feet, the house at One Bel Air isn't just one of the most expensive in the world, but it's also one of the largest in the United States. This amazingly lavish property was developed by Niall Niami and designed by architect Paul McLean, and the entire endeavor took about 10 years to complete this thing. This home, the rich and famous, has 26-foot-high ceilings, 21 bedrooms, 5 swimming pools, 42 bathrooms, and a 30-car garage, and really puts the homes of even the richest neighbors to shame. And of course, the house at One Bel Air sits atop a hill with panoramic views of downtown LA, the San Gabriel Mountains, and the Pacific Ocean, so the owner can get just about every type of view depending on their mood. And of course, there's the price tag, and you can be sure that a place like this isn't going to come cheap. So just how much does the One Bel Air cost? Try a whopping $340 million. Number 6. 4 Fairfield Pond. Ira Rennert, CEO and chairman of Renco Group and all-around billionaire, is the lucky owner of 4 Fairfield Pond, an Italian Renaissance-style home in the Hamptons. There's no denying that the Hamptons is one of the wealthiest and most extravagant locales in the United States, but 4 Fairfield Pond really puts other neighbors to shame. This palatial home sits on 63 acres of beachfront property that Rennert can enjoy all to himself. The mansion itself is an insane 62,000 square feet with 29 bedrooms, so the man can sleep in a new room just about every night for a month, 39 bathrooms, and what mansion would be complete without a 91-foot dining room? Well, it really sounds like more of a banquet hall, if anything. Hopefully for his guests, Ira Rennert knows how to throw a party, and I'm sure any kids lucky enough to step foot inside this home would love a good game of never-ending hide-and-seek. But when folks want to have a little fun, there's the bowling alley, squash courts, tennis courts, 3 swimming pools, a basketball court, and the icing on the cake, a garage that can hold up to 100 cars. And all of this can be yours for the price of $248 million. Number 5. Oheka Castle. The hustle and bustle of New York City has the power to simultaneously make and break dreams. It's a strange fact about the city. Love it or hate it, though, getting out of the city even just for a weekend is a great way to hit the reset button. So get in the car and head just 34 miles outside of the Big Apple and you'll find Oheka Castle, a century-old mansion that was once the second largest private residence in the country. And boy, if those walls could talk. Oheka Castle was as close to the Gatsby Mansion as you could get because the estate was known for hosting some of the hottest, wildest, and most expensive and debaucherous parties on the East Coast, where the who's who of Hollywood would come to cut loose. These parties became so legendary that once F. Scott Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby hit the stands, many of the trades quickly made the connection between Gatsby and Oheka. The home was owned by Otto Herman Kahn, a businessman and financier who immigrated to the United States to find his fortune in 1893. Safe to say, Mr. Kahn certainly found it, and then some. Construction of Long Island's Oheka Castle began in 1914 after Kahn purchased 443 acres of land for $1 million, before dropping another $11 million on the castle itself. In today's currency, that's about $158 million. Of course, all good things must come to an end, and the party ended with Kahn's death. This castle was converted into a retirement home and a military academy and was eventually abandoned before being purchased by local land developers. Today, the 109,000 square foot Oheka Castle is one of the nicest hotels in the US, with 127 rooms, a grand library complete with a secret passageway behind a bookcase, and an 18-hole golf course, tennis court, stables, orchards, and even once had a landing strip. And if this massive estate looks familiar to you TV and movie buffs out there, that's because it's been featured in plenty of films and TV programs. Number 4. The Biltmore Estate. Home to one of the richest people in the world, Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North Carolina was built in the late 1800s as the summer home of George W. Vanderbilt. The estate's most notable feature is the French Renaissance Mansion, which is considered the largest private residence in the United States. And that's not an easy feat to achieve by any means. At the tail end of the 19th century, the Vanderbilts acquired the 125,000-acre estate and built this palatial home in just 6 years. In the end, the home had a total of 250 rooms across 4 acres of floor space. There were 43 bathrooms, 24 bedrooms, 65 fireplaces, and even an indoor pool, which wasn't all that common in those days. Not to mention the extensive rare art and antique collection and an astounding 10,000-volume library. But then there's everything leading up to the mansion itself. Just to get to the front door, visitors, staff, and residents need to make the 3-mile journey up the bamboo-flanked main lane. Not to be outdone, the landscape architect also established the first managed forest in the United States on the estate. And Vanderbilt hired professional foresters at the turn of the 20th century and opened the country's first forestry school here. George W. Vanderbilt died shortly after in 1914, and the massive Biltmore estate passed on to his wife, who sold 87,000 acres to the United States Forest Service. But in the 21st century, even more land was sold, reducing the estate down to about 8,000 acres. The mansion finally opened to the public in 1930, and more than 1 million people come here a year to catch a glimpse of how the other half lived all those years ago. Every story deserves a happy ending, so the Biltmore Estate became a National Historical Landmark in 1962 and was added to the U.S. National Registry of Historic Places in 1966. Number 3. Buckingham Palace. Although it's a palace, it's more important to remember that Buckingham Palace is still someone's home. The Queen of England's home has an incredible 775 rooms, with 52 royal and guest bedrooms, 78 bathrooms, and 92 offices, and it's so big that for all she knows, people have been living there for decades without anyone even noticing. Well, how hard would it be? And while the Crown owns plenty of castles and estates throughout the UK, they've owned Buckingham Palace for almost 200 years. Just think of all the history and stories embedded into those walls. And while Buckingham Palace isn't going to be put up for sale, probably ever, you can most definitely put a price tag on it. In all, the estimated value of this palatial royal residence is about $3 billion. The place contains the Queen's Gallery, which exhibits the royal art collection, which included historic Fabergé eggs and even drawings by Leonardo da Vinci, making Buckingham Palace not only a private residence, but a museum in its own right. Number 2. Antilia Tower. When you can't build out, just build up. Antilia Tower in Mumbai, India is one of the most extravagant and expensive places to live in the world, and it's one of the most expensive. The Antilia Tower was designed in part with Chicago architecture firm Perkins & Will and the Santa Monica hospitality design firm Hirsch Bedner Associates, all for one man, Indian businessman and billionaire Mukesh Ambani. And unlike your typical mega mansion, Antilia Tower builds not just out, but up with 400,000 square feet of space and 27 stories that Ambani doesn't have to share with anybody. And of course, this massive home has some pretty cool stuff inside, like a 50-seat movie theater, 6 floors devoted to just car storage, a car service station, a temple, and 9 high-speed elevators to get you from top to bottom and back again in a flash. And oh, don't forget about a snow room. This is a room that sprays snowflakes from its walls. It's absolutely nuts. And to have his own private winter wonderland in India, Ambani spent between $1 and $2 billion. But when an ode to extreme wealth is built in a country where more than a quarter of the citizens live under the poverty line, there's going to be some controversy, and Antilia Tower is no different. This multi-billion-dollar home quite literally looks down on the impoverished surrounding neighborhoods and stands as a testament to the growing divide between the uber-rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots, in a country where nearly 100 million people barely make ends meet. So it's safe to say that when Ambani's neighbors found out he was building a 6-story garage to house cars worth more than enough to feed all of his neighbors 10 times over, they weren't too thrilled. Number 1. Istana Nurul Iman Palace. The final entry on our list does the impossible by putting all of the other mega mansions to shame. Located in Brunei, the Istana Nurul Iman Palace is the official residence of the Sultan of Brunei and provides him with his much-needed 2.1 million square feet of space. Yeah, you think that's a little much? Well, the Sultan and his family probably don't, and you wouldn't either if you got to live there, I guess. The Istanbul Palace has 1,788 rooms, 257 bathrooms, and a mosque that fits up to 1,500 people. Then there's the 200 polo pony stables, 5 swimming pools, and a 110-car garage. The palace's name translates to Palace of Faithlight and was designed back in 1984 and cost almost $1.5 billion to build. And yeah, the value has surely gone up since then. When you look at the palace's exterior, you'll notice the gold domes and vaulted roofs, which combine the local Malay and Islamic architectures to create the most extravagant home in the world. But don't worry, because the Sultan and his family aren't the only people there. The palace may serve as their private home, but it's also where foreign dignitaries stay when they come to visit. It's also open to visitors 3 days a year at the end of Ramadan, when guests are served food to break their fast. Istanbul Palace, it's the type of home that you can really sink your teeth into. I'll see you next time.
Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.